Welcome to Inside College Admission, conversations with admission leaders about matters affecting the college going process. My name is Peter Van Buskirk, and I'm joined today by Kent Reinhardt, who is the Dean of Admission and Associate Vice President for Enrollment Management at Marist College. Welcome, Kent.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks for having me today.
Well, I needed to have somebody on who had a title that ran two lines. That's a long title.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure why I've got a title quite like that, but they just keep adding words every few years. So I'm a pretty lucky guy.
Well, good. And I know you are. Gosh, it's what, April the 8th? It's got to be time for you to be just giving lots of hugs to admitted students and making them feel special. But I suspect your campus is kind of empty right now.
It is. It's very quiet. In New York State, the governor has shut down all colleges and universities. So there's very few students on campus. There are a few who had mostly were international students who were not able to go home, and so we're housing them on campus. And there's very few staff that are supporting them. And I've been to campus a couple times, but in general, it's a very quiet place. It's quieter than I've ever seen it.
Well, and that's disquieting in itself, I would imagine, because it will never look better than here in April with the trees and flowers budding, and it's the perfect time to host, right? And now, gosh.
It is. It's actually it's not the Marist that I know. The Marist I know is a vital, interesting, energetic place filled with a lot of interesting young people that are doing amazing things, and it's a little bit of a ghost town. So it's a bit unsettling, quite frankly.
Well, help me understand how things sort of unfolded on your campus with the revelation that this virus was going to be bigger than a weekend kind of illness. At first, it's something that happened in China, and then it happened in Seattle, and all of a sudden we're in lockdown almost. But what was happening on your campus? What kind of conversations were taking place as we went through this?
It was really interesting because we have a branch campus in Florence, Italy. And
Oh,
so in many ways, we were impacted by this directly a little bit earlier than most schools because we started having conversations about our operations in Florence before there was really a conversation about New York and our entire United States operations. And so it extended a little bit for us because we were trying to figure out what we were going to do with Florence, and we brought students back from there and made that decision and closed that campus. And very quickly we were going into that same type of thinking for the New York campus. And it was difficult because we were trying to get through midterm exams. And so we got through midterm exams, which I believe ended on the 13th of March, and we shut down immediately. That was our last day of operation. And so it was tough. I mean, from the admission side, it was hard because we had a number of admitted student receptions planned for the middle of March in various locales all across the country and around the world. So we had programs planned for Hawaii and California and Florida and New Jersey and other places. And as we watched this, we were trying to figure out, we were trying to balance what was happening in the local community, what was happening in our community, how our staff were doing in terms of how comfortable they were feeling in the situation. We were also adjusting our admitted student weekend. As we watched this unfold, we started to think, boy, we may not be able to have 2,000 people or 3,000 people in an arena and have a big event. So we started to reimagine how we would do that differently in smaller events on campus, as well as started to move toward the virtual environment. So we were working this in a number of different angles. At the same time, our admissions committee was in process, and we do our admissions committee in person. And so we started to we really tried to accelerate that process, and not that we were going recklessly, but we were having the staff work on Saturdays and Sundays because we saw this was coming, and we wanted to be able to have that engagement that we have with students' applications. We wanted to do it in person, and so the committee kept going late into the night and on the weekends. And as this all kind of came about, we started to. The one thing that happened is as every day came along, at a certain point, you actually started to get more clarity as to where we were going.
Right.
In the beginning, it was almost like you were trying to manage the unknown, and
Hmm.
then after a while, you started to realize that we're not going to have the big events on campus, and then eventually, we're not going to have any events on campus, and so that helped us kind of zero in on what we needed to focus in on and be successful with in the current environment.
Wow. I don't envy you that journey. Now, in the
I will tell you, I've been doing this for 25 years,
Mhm.
and I have never had a 3-week period like that 3 weeks of March. Never.
No,
It was just it was changing so quickly that you couldn't even fathom how fast things were happening. And you'd be standing there on a Thursday and say, yeah, we talked about that a couple weeks ago. And you were talking about a conversation that happened on Tuesday. So it was just an extraordinary time in our country and certainly in our profession.
well, and I don't need to tell you where you are geographically relative to the the big hotspot, and hopefully that's not reached too far north toward you.
Yeah, we have, there have been some cases around Marist. We had one case on campus that I'm aware of. But certainly our accessibility to New York City, by no means are we in New York City, but for students that come from around the world and come from California and come from Minnesota and come from Texas, New York City is a big draw, and those students they want to be near New York City, but not in New York City, and so they have certainly some hesitancy because New York, whatever that is in their
Right.
mind, the epicenter, and we are not. Marist is not the epicenter, but some students perceive New York as one entity,
Right.
where in reality it's a huge state, and so we're not in the epicenter by any means, but certainly, it's around, no doubt. And I think that our governor's been terrific in terms of leading the state in our response to this epidemic.
Absolutely. Well, in terms of the admission deliberations, at some point, did you look at your candidate pool and think, forget the models? I mean, everything, and in admission, we tend to work with models based on historical data. But were you wondering about the relevance of that data at some point and just trying to figure out how you can recalibrate for perhaps different outcomes this year?
Yes, we did. We intentionally looked at what we were doing and ultimately made the decision that we did not want to um, punish any students because of their geographic region, even though we knew the way this was going to play out, it may impact the number of students that actually selected us.
Hmm.
So we intentionally did not say we're going to take fewer students that were international. We did not say we're going to take fewer students that live a great distance from the college, even though we knew that more likely than not, there would be some students that were very interested in us who ultimately decided that they wanted to just stay closer to home,
Hmm.
which I can certainly understand if that's a decision they make. What we did do, though, is we did go back to some of the areas that were a little closer to us and said, let's see if we can find a few more students to admit. So we took some students that were originally probably going to end up on the wait list, and we moved them into the admit pool to kind of make up for the lower yield that we anticipated based on the world's events.
Will this be a year of the wait list? And when there's uncertainty, we need a wait list, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think it's safe to assume that there will be increased waitlist activity across the board at colleges and universities like Marist, and I think it's gonna be a pretty active waitlist year. We have not moved on our waitlist yet. and I don't expect us to for a little bit longer, as we just want to see how this all plays out. But it's I think the wait list will be an active year.
Well, and the tough part is there are no reliable markers for you. You can't say in 2 weeks it should be this or 4 weeks it should be that, because you might get different news from the governor or or the CDC about what's happening, and that just kind of throw it up in the air. Now, are you, with that in mind, has Marist considered changing its enrollment deadline or its enrollment deposit for students to accommodate the kind of upheaval that families are experiencing?
We've had that conversation, and we've been monitoring the movement that some schools have gone to June 1. And we have, at this point, not made a move to our deposit deadline. We're continuing to monitor it. It's when watching how quickly this evolved, um, we really felt like we didn't want to make a decision at a moment that was rushed.
Hmm.
Um, and certainly, if there becomes the opportunity for us to host students on campus in May, then there's a compelling reason for us to consider that. But as of right now, we're going to stay with May 1, and work with students on an individual basis. I understand, some schools have moved to June 1, and that's a decision each school has to kind of make in their own environment. But we're staying with May 1 for right now. But we'll watch it as we go along, and we may think differently in a couple weeks. We'll see.
A corollary to this is the economic situation as well. And I suspect you have a fair number of families in your admitted group that approached the last couple of months feeling some degree of confidence that they knew what it was going to cost and they could manage it, or with the financial aid they were likely to get, they could manage it. But their realities have changed pretty dramatically in the last 2 weeks. Um, how does that affect the way your team is looking at yielding over the summer?
Yeah, it's interesting because the 2 hours before I hopped on this call with you, I was on the reconsideration committee going through those very cases, and
Hmm.
I would say probably 80 to 90% of them are referring to COVID-19.
Hmm.
So the impact is significant. I think that the challenge that we all have is how permanent of an impact is this? Is this a 2-month hiccup, or is this going to be a multi-year impact? And that's obviously going to vary family to family.
Right.
What we're doing is we're giving additional um, counseling to all these students. So any student who submits a reconsideration request to us, we're making decisions, but we're also having a financial aid counselor talk with them, walk through their process and where their thinking is and how can we help. And for some students, we're advising them that maybe Marist is not the right fit financially, and we're helping to try to make that decision for them, because if we're setting a student up for a huge amount of debt, we're not doing them any favors. So we're working individually with them. In addition to that, I think it's safe to say that we're going to be giving out a little bit more financial aid than in previous years, just because of the nature of what's happening economically in our country.
I guess by necessity, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's a certain amount of triage then that takes place as you hear all the conversations.
Yeah, I mean, the last month has been triage, and I think, quite frankly, I think that we're going to see triage all the way up to enrollment.
Hmm.
I think that everything is being adjusted across the board. So, um, our current students that are attending Marist, they haven't selected their housing for next year yet. So that's being reimagined, and how we do that. It used to be a big event, kind of like a celebration, an
Right.
all-day event where the students, it's kind of fun for them. And that's being reimagined. We're reimagining orientation for our incoming students. So there's a lot of things that are going to be changing. And I think, we're going to do some of the things really, really well and really interesting. And Others we're gonna struggle with a little bit. But with every change, there's an opportunity, and I think we're gonna actually become a better institution after all this is behind us.
I'm certain of that. Um, Before all of this health and economic crisis hit us over the last several months, there were other concerns that were large on our radars, if you will, relating to the Department of Justice and its activity with our national association, and kind of opening the doors for greater latitude of movement of families in this process, perhaps comparing aid awards, maybe colleges talking to students who've already made a commitment at one place to see if they come to another. Uh, and I know that people were imagining something of a bit of a free for all that could come out of that. This current environment just kind of fuels that, doesn't it? Do you see that?
Yeah, I hope not. I mean, I understand that there's going to be schools that are financially on the edge and are in some kind of danger in a financial sense, and so those schools, desperation will breed some decision making that maybe you wouldn't make if you weren't as desperate as you are. My hope is that the schools that Marist competes against and are not in that place, and that we continue the collegiality that we've always had
Mm-hmm.
and respect. And it's really it's part of it is, yes, you want to behave in a certain way and you want to respect the other school, but for me it gets down to the student. And when a student has made a decision as to where they want to go, I want to respect that. I want to give that student the opportunity to give that school every opportunity to be successful, because the reality is there's a lot of great schools out there. There's a lot of students that have made decisions. A lot of students think, "Oh, I found my one school,"
Right.
and what they often don't realize is there's a lot of schools that would be wonderful for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if a student has decided that another school is a great fit for them, I would hope that most people in my seat would respect that and allow that student and that school every opportunity to have a great experience together.
It'll be a real test across the board, though, for those in your position at colleges and universities around the country to model good and ethical behavior in that regard.
It will be. It absolutely will be, and there's going to be pressure from above at some places, and we can only hope that that we're doing what's best for students.
Well stated. Kent, let's take a step back now, and I'd like to kind of imagine what the situation is like, or maybe you can help us understand better what the situation is like for the admitted students. Again, they're admitted, they're excited about coming out to Marist, they want to visit, they want to go to classes, talk to your professors, they want to sit in on panel presentations, and then all of a sudden they got to stay home. How are you meeting them now? How are you giving them that last touch, if you will, that last touch experience that they would normally get on campus?
That's a great question. I mean, we have always talked at Marist about what's our special sauce, and our special sauce is our community. The
Mm-hmm.
community that we have, the students, the faculty. It's really a truly amazing place where people take care of each other, and people get that vibe. They get it when they're on campus. They can feel it. It's pervasive across campus when people are walking around and experiencing the place. When you get to a virtual environment, that's a much harder thing to bring forth. One of the things that this pandemic and the situation that we're in our country has allowed us and required us to do is to think really differently about how we position our institutions and how we engage with young people. And so we are taking every aspect of our institution and making it available the best we can virtually. And so, we have set up a series of events that deal with the hot topics of students. So it could be anything from obviously all of our academic programs, but housing and dining and career services and student employment, if you're wondering about how to get a job,
Sure.
advise, all kinds of things. I mean, it really it runs the gamut. But we're also making our campus available in a one-on-one conversation. So if you have a question about anything on campus, then we will get you in touch with the right person. You want to find out when we are, how we do our cleaning, then we'll get our person who's in charge of housekeeping that will give you a call and will explain what our process is and how often and what types of cleaning agents are we using, all those types of things. So in many ways, we're actually providing more information now about our institution than we did in any of our campus programs. The negative is that we can give kids information and we do the best we can with that. And we have student panels, we have student panels 3 or 4 times a week for these students to sit in and get to know people. But the thing is you don't get that secret sauce. That's really hard to bring forth. And so we're doing the best we can with it. The other thing we are doing is we've set up a portal and we're allowing these students to, it's essentially like, you think about Facebook, the students have their profiles. They have a profile in the Marist portal and the students can connect with each other. And so the class of 2024 at Marist is already connecting with each other in this virtual environment, and they're getting to know each other. There's message boards, and they're connecting with each other, and that's really important because students, when they're making their college decisions, sometimes it's all about things that are quantifiable. What's your financial aid package, and what's the job placement rate, and how many computer labs they have, and what type of internships they have, and all that kind of stuff. Then there's another part that's just what feels right in your heart, in your gut, and that's different for each kid. And that's we're trying to help students kind of figure that out. That are the young people that's going to be their fellow classmates, going to be people that they want to hang out with, they want to learn and live with together for the next 4 years.
Wow. So while the current enrollment process, because of the circumstances, might be somewhat open-ended into the summer, and this virtual engagement will continue, I'm sure, you have another layer coming. You've got the class of 2025, and that doesn't wait for you. Those kids are ready to go. So normally you'd think about the second half of the year, your staff would be traveling to high schools, college nights, college fairs, doing credential review sessions, open houses. All of that's on hold for the moment. What are you doing with that? I mean, are you kind of developing parallel plans here?
Well, we've got a whole virtual campaign going on with all of them too. There's information sessions. We have student panels. So our Marist students are they are really enthusiastic about our institution. So whenever we say we need a few people for a student panel, we've got so many that want to help out. And the high school students, the high school juniors and sophomores, they're a captive bunch because many of them are stuck at home.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking for things to do, and so we've actually had pretty good attendance on our virtual programming. So that's been good. We have also a few high schools have asked us to be on panels for them. So we're still engaging in panels via Zoom or WebEx or something like that. We've also offered to high schools that if they want us to host their college night program, where they grab 2 or 3 or 4 colleges and they do a panel and a Q&A. We're happy to host that on our virtual platforms for them. So we're offering that out to high schools to assist. But it's not ideal. I'm not going to pretend it is, but there is an opportunity. I mean, it's making us reimagine and rethink how we engage with students at every step of the process, from really sophomores all the way to admitted seniors and transfers. And so I think at the end of the day, when we're able to go back to the normalcy of hosting students on campus, we're also going to have now a whole online library and knowledge base of being able to offer students really the best of both worlds, the best campus visit experience when you're physically on a campus, but also the best virtual experience from their their living room. So it's a challenge. We've had to rethink a lot of things, but we're trying to bring our campus alive in a number of different ways for them.
It's kind of funny. Was once confronted with a challenge that I didn't feel prepared for. And as I was talking with my president about this, he said, I just count on you taking advantage of your good liberal arts experience to make this work. So it sounds like there's an awful lot of opportunity being born out of crisis and creativity that is moving you forward, which is good stuff.
It is. It's kind of fun. I mean, it's exhausting,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not a huge virtual guy by the state of my age, but I think it's kind of fun to think about things in a completely different environment, and you think outside the box, and you get a whole bunch of people together, and you kick around a lot of ideas, and if you get a bunch of smart people together, and most of our team are Marist alums, they're pretty
Mm-hmm.
bright. They can think out of the box, and we kick it around, we argue, and ultimately, I think we get to a pretty good place.
Very good. Now, with regard to the students who would be class of 2025, the current high school juniors, they're dealing with some real uncertainty themselves. One of the things that looms large for them is the question of testing. And many will have taken a PSAT or an early ACT, then a regular test, and they look at the results and they say, no, it's okay, but I can do better. And now they're waiting for that opportunity to retake a test and do better, and those tests continue to be canceled.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a conversation taking place at Marist about how to accommodate kids who might otherwise show a different kind of test profile than they will be presenting this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we are so when it comes to testing,
Yeah.
we've been test optional for many years, almost a decade. So that has been that's been great for us. We've felt for a long time that we'd much rather evaluate students based on 3.5 years of high school than 3.5 hours on a Saturday morning. So that's worked really well for us, and that's not going to change. And if students want to submit their test, they can. If they don't, it doesn't hurt them. They can still get the same scholarships. There's no exclusions at all. So we have students that don't submit tests that are in our honors program and get our top scholarships and all kinds of things.
So you've kind of answered the question that I hear once in a while, is that cynical question. Well, if I don't send my scores in, won't they assume they're low? And you're saying we don't even think about it.
Don't even think about it. It's not even a consideration. It really isn't. And so I came to Marist in 2006, and I think we went test optional in 2009 or 2010, somewhere
Mm-hmm.
around there. And we had students who asked, how important are the SATs when we required them, and we would say, well, they're not that important, and we don't make. I told students we never make a decision. We never admit or deny students based strictly on an SAT score. And I had a student one time say, well, why do you require them then? And I didn't have an answer. I did not have a good answer.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we started to look at the data and realize that it's just not a great predictor for Marist.
Mm-hmm.
And so we made that decision. I think to answer your question, if we take a step back and actually broaden it beyond
Sure.
the standardized tests, this is an extraordinary time in our country and an extraordinary time for young people in terms of what they're enduring in terms of going online learning and being quarantined at home. And so I think as students think about what they're going through, I think most colleges and certainly us at Marist are going to really be understanding about some of the decisions and some of the choices that they had. So whether it be you weren't able to take the tests in the spring, no big deal. If your school goes to pass fail then we're going to understand that. Like, I don't want students to feel pressured to choose a grading system or, choose not to go pass fail, uh, because they're worried about a college. I think they need to do what's best for their own mental health, and what's going to make them kind of take down their stress level a little bit, because there's a lot of anxiety. There's anxiety from their parents about money and jobs and health, obviously, and the students have anxiety. They're missing out on spring sports and activities and seeing their friends and being a teenager. And so that's very, very difficult. And so as we look at both the academic evaluation, obviously extracurriculars we know are pretty much not possible in most environments, and demonstrate interest. There's a a lot of schools use demonstrate interest as a part of their determination who they're going to admit, and Marist is one of them. But we've got to take a different look at how we're evaluating this type of information for class of 2025, 2026, 2027. The next few years, this is going to be something that we have to consider, and that's the counseling side of what we do. We want to be right and do right by kids, and we're going to be really understanding that this is an extraordinary time, and we can't just go about admission file review is business as usual. That just is not going to work for the next few years.
Well, what I hear you saying, though, speaks to the historic strength of the holistic admission selection process. Taking a look at a lot of different variables and information from different perspectives, and kind of triangulating on the young person through those different lenses. One of those lenses is bound to be the essay. Will this be the year of the coronavirus essay?
It may. It could be. Yeah, next year it may. I think.
Now, is that good or bad, or neither?
I don't think it's either. I think So when I get an application, and the scary thing for high school students to think about is that they spend hours upon hours upon hours upon hours working on their college application, and in many cases we read them in 15 minutes or 12 minutes, and then we're on to the next one just because of the thousands and thousands and thousands of applications we have to read. But during those 15 minutes that I'm reading that young person's application, I'm going to try to spend the next 15 minutes walking in their shoes. And so I look at things like, are their parents married, or are they divorced? Is this student the first student to go off to college, or do they come from a long line of students or family members who went to college? Are they an only child? Are they a twin? Are they one of seven? I'm trying to get an idea of, like, what is this kid's life like? And so when you get to the essay is the chance, to strip it down. The essay is a chance for the student to talk to the admissions committee. And it's their chance to say, this is what I'm all about. And it could be about what their dreams are, what their aspirations are, or it could be that some extraordinary event that occurred.
Mm-hmm.
If that extraordinary event is COVID-19, then that's what they should write about. If that's what they want us to recognize and realize the impact it had on them, then they should feel comfortable writing about that. It's as long as the essay is authentic and genuine, impactful, thoughtful, well written, then that's all we're asking for. I don't go into an essay and say, boy, I really hope the essay is about X. A lot of times students think, well, what does the admissions committee want to hear from me? And I would encourage them to turn that around. It's, what do you want to tell the admissions committee? You actually, as a student, have the power. You have the power to share what you want to share and position yourself however you want to position yourself. So when I read your essay, I don't have any idea what I want to read. I just want to hear what you have to tell me. And if it's about COVID-19, then tell me about COVID-19. If you want to tell me how it impacted you, then do that. If you want to ignore it and you want to focus on something completely different, that's perfectly fine with me too. It's the chance for the student to talk to the admissions committee.
That's great advice, and I hope that a lot of young people hear that. As we kind of bring ourselves toward the close here, I want to imagine with you a scenario where you have a random conversation with a 17-year-old who's approaching the senior year of high school, feeling a bit overwhelmed by what's going on in the world, perhaps bewildered, and just out of sorts with regard to the college process. What's all this going to be like now? What advice? What advice would you have for that 17-year-old as she or he looks ahead to the next year?
I think it's okay to be scared. I think it's okay to be anxious. I think that anybody who says that they aren't is probably not being truthful. But at the end of the day, colleges there's a lot of great colleges out there. And if you decide to go to college X and college X is not the right fit, you can transfer. If you decide you may not want to go to college and you want to take a gap year or work or go into the military, then you can do that. College will be waiting for you. Um, it's interesting because there's a lot of 17-year-olds in the world who have no clue what they want to do with the rest of their life. And um, a lot of students I talk with say, I'm not really sure. I don't know what I want to do. And as somebody who's worked with young people, and I love working with young people, that's my favorite part about my job, is I just want to reassure them that it's okay. It's okay not to be sure. It's okay to admit that you're a little nervous. It's okay um, to admit to yourself and admit to your parents that you have some real hesitations. What I will tell you is that the people on the college side, we're here to help you be successful. And that's whether it's the admissions office or a faculty member or somebody in the student affairs area. We're we're a community that's there to help young people be successful. And that transition from high school to college is never perfect. It's never smooth. There's a lot of bumps in the road along the way. And part of enduring and surviving and persevering through those bumps is what helps you get to be an adult on the other side and be a successful adult and be a contributing member to our society. So I know it's scary. I know it's frightening, and the world is changing really really quickly. But at the end of the day, students find their way. Students find their way to a place that most colleges are accepting most students that they apply to. The media likes to focus in on the super selective, where it's it feels like it's impossible to get into. But colleges are going to work with you, and if a college doesn't admit you, then it wasn't the right fit. And there's a lot of great schools that are out there, and there's a lot of really successful people that went to community college and then transferred to a four-year school and went on to get their PhD or their MD. So there's a lot of opportunities to do amazing things, and it's just the path isn't always the easiest path or the most straightforward path. But if you just keep working hard, stay positive, it will turn out okay.
Wonderful. Words to live by. Thank you for that, Kent. Before we sign off, is there a resource, a website that you'd like to refer folks to so they might learn a little bit more about what's happening at Marist these days?
Sure, we would love to have you learn more about Marist at www.marist, marist.edu. It's an extraordinary place. Our students are retaining and graduating at very high rates. And so if you think that we might be something you're interested in, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help out.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for that. And thank you for your time today. I'm sure that the last thing you needed was to spend an hour with somebody talking about the college process. Well, maybe it's a pleasant break after Zoom meetings on campus all day, but
That's right.
glad to have you. It's always wonderful to catch up with you. And I'm sure the folks who listened in will take great information from our conversation. So we'll look forward to including folks in other conversations with other deans along the way. Until then, be safe, everyone, and have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter.
Take care.
Bye-bye.